Hello, let's talk about traditional handbooks and how traditional handbooks actually don't protect your organization in the ways that you think that it might or they might. So, every company that talks about or looks at employment law or employment laws or just HR as a topic wants to be compliant and reduce risk. I've never met a business owner who says, "Yes, I'm going to be risky," or "That makes a lot, you know what, I want to be sued." Yes, sign me up. Nobody loves this, right? So, in order to actually be compliant and reduce risk, we need to actually first understand what does it mean to be compliant and what does risk reduction actually look like. The topic that gets brought up the most and almost right out of the gate in every conversation I have is, wait a minute, I've got an employee handbook. I'm covered. Well, let's talk about employee handbooks and why traditional employee handbooks are actually really risky. So, traditional employee handbooks, as you're probably aware, are very long. They're extremely hard to read. They usually have a signature page, front or back. They're not updated automatically, meaning that you have that handbook, it goes out to your people, and there's not some handbook fairy that comes in and updates your handbook. They're often incomplete, which I'll talk about in a moment. They're not typically understood by your employees because of the way that they're written. There's no proof of compliance, meaning that I can't prove that the employee read and understood everything contained in that handbook. And it results in a very risky situation because what happens then is you end up in court at some point. A judge looks at all of this and asks, can you prove that this employee read and understood that individual policy that you're trying to use to defend yourself? Which means that you have this false sense of security that a handbook has you covered. Let's talk about why that happens and how to fix it. In the United States, there are 1.5 million plus employment laws, which means that there's over 1.5 million laws in the US. Those laws, if we were to go into a giant warehouse and separate them out, would be stacked into 4 stacks. We have codes, regulations, agency guidance, and court cases. If you and I were to sit down and read every one of those laws, what we would discover is that there are 6 things that need to be done at a federal and state level in the US. And those 6 things that need to be done would have to be organized into 51 buckets. There's one for the federal government, and then there's one for every one of the 50 states in the US. And in that list of things that need to be done are policies. Now, policies are what get delivered in an employee handbook. The rest of this stuff does not often get delivered in an employee handbook. So, one of the 6 things is policies, right? Which means that when we create a handbook, what we're doing is we're delivering policies that are required or optional to our employees, which means that we've really looked at and handled 1/6 of the total things that need to be done to be compliant and reduce risk, which is another reason why companies have a false sense of security or the idea that they're protected by having a handbook, when in fact, a handbook only tackles one of these 6 things. But that aside, let's take a look at that one of 6 things, the policies. So that list of policies that we now have, because we read all the laws, right? We organized all of the stacks. We have all of those different stacks, the federal rules, the state rules, the local rules, all that stuff, right? So there's really more than 51 because you have the local level rules. But that aside, we have all these policies, and these policies then get put into a traditional handbook, right? And these traditional handbooks that we usually hire an attorney to do, or maybe we go to ChatGPT or whatever it is we use to create this thing, we then create a physical document. And that physical document is long, it's hard to read, it has a signature page, which is supposed to let us know that the employee at least signed a document that says that they read and understood it. We know that it's not updated unless we go in and update it, or whether we hire somebody to update it periodically. It's going to be incomplete. Well, if we read all the laws and we knew everything, then it probably wouldn't be incomplete. But we know from experience in going in and looking at handbooks, most handbooks are incomplete, meaning that whoever did them, like ChatGPT or AI, doesn't have all the laws. If you doubt this, go into ChatGPT right now, type in how many employment laws are in the United States, or how many labor laws are in the US. And what you'll get is either no answer, or they'll give you an answer of around 300,000-ish federal laws. There's over 1.5 million laws in the US that tie to employment or labor law, right? So it's incomplete, and ChatGPT doesn't know all the policies. They're not typically understood. We can't prove that the employee read and understood every single page. And it creates this false sense of security, which is really risky, because what ends up happening is in court is a lawyer or a judge looks at the handbook and asks, okay, can you prove that the employee actually read this policy or understood it? And if you can't do that, then they throw it in the trash and they act like you never had it. So how do we solve the traditional handbook problem? How do we solve this stale giant document that nobody reads, nobody understands, creates risk, false sense of security? The way that we solve this is through handbook presentations. And what those are actual video presentations of each individual policy. Using software, we go into the software, we enter in our company's information. It automatically looks at the laws that connect to our company. It automatically goes to the list of policies that we need to include in our handbook for our employees. And it creates a handbook presentation, which is not long. It's much faster to get through because they're short videos that employees can actually watch and understand. It's not hard to read because the employees are able to listen to, watch, and understand the video. And they have the text of the policy on the screen, but it's very easy to understand. There is not a signature page because every single video has an acknowledgement button, which means the moment I watch an individual video on a policy, I'm individually acknowledging that I understood every single policy. And that's date and time stamped and stored in the software so that later, if asked, can you prove that this person understood the policy? You can go right into the policy, see here's the policy, here's the date and time that they actually watched the video, and it provides a much better evidence of proof that the employee understood it. It's completely updated, meaning that real time, as new laws come out, those new laws that change those policies automatically get updated in your handbook presentations. So your handbook presentations are never out of date and never stale. It's complete because we've taken all of the laws to grab all the policies to put in the handbook presentation. Your employees actually understand it. And I know this is true because we have many companies that have reached out to us where their head of HR or their executives have said, hey, first time ever, I actually got some questions about the handbook presentations that we sent out. It's almost like they never understood or read, what they were given before, and then they'll laugh and they're like, yeah, I guess they didn't. But it's actually understood because the employees are able to watch videos, right? You have proof of compliance because you're able to actually go in and, like I said, have a date and time stamp that connects to every single policy. And it actually reduces risk because when asked, can you prove that an employee understood this policy, that they got through it, and that they actually, got it, you can point right into the system and say, yes, here's the date and time that they went through that policy, watched the video, saw the full text, and they clicked that I understood this piece of the handbook. So handbook presentations are a much better way to actually be compliant and reduce risk. And having software that creates this and keeps it up to date, and then also tracks when your employees went through the handbook and what they read, understood, and acknowledged is a way to actually solve the traditional handbook problem, which historically has created a false sense of security for companies. So if you're really wanting to be compliant and reduce risk, sending out handbook presentations is a much more effective way to do that. In fact, I might go so far as to say it's the only way to do that. Hopefully this is helpful.